My Lords, this ruling brings welcome clarity and confidence for women and service providers. And throughout my life, not just as a minister, I've campaigned and worked for women's rights and for the need for single-sex spaces, including, given my great age, when it wasn't the mainstream concern that it has become now. Like many of my sisters on these benches, some of my earliest political campaigning was for the single-sex spaces necessary in refuges and rape crisis services to protect and support women. The government will therefore continue, as before, working to protect single-sex spaces based on biological sex, now with the added clarity of this ruling. And we will continue our wider work with commitment and compassion to protect all those who need it right across society. This is a government who will support the rights of women and trans people now and always. This is a government who will support the rights of our most vulnerable now and always. And on that, there is no change. However, this is an important judgment, long in the making. It began in 2018 when Scottish ministers issued guidance on the definition of a woman in the eyes of the Gender Representation on Public Boards Scotland Act 2018. That guidance stated that a woman in that Act bears the same meaning as a woman in the Equality Act 2010 and included trans women with a gender recognition certificate. For Women Scotland challenged that guidance, saying that sex in the Equality Act means biological sex, so that a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate is a man for the purposes of the Act. The case was appealed to the Supreme Court, and last week the court ruled that sex in the Equality Act means biological sex. This means that a person will be considered as their biological sex for the purposes of the Equality Act, regardless of whether they have a gender recognition certificate. As both noble ladies have identified, there is now a need to ensure that this ruling is clear across a range of settings, from healthcare and prisons to sport and single-sex support groups. The Equality and Human Rights Commission, as Britain's equality regulator, is working quickly to issue an updated statutory code of practice to reflect this judgment, and we look forward to reviewing that code of practice in due course, and it will, of course, be laid for approval in front of Parliament. On some of the other specific issues raised by the noble lady Baroness Steadman-Scott, on the both the relationship, sex and health education and the gender questioning children's guidance that I think she was referring to, that draft, of course, was produced just before last July's general election and before the response, before the CAS review recommendations. We are considering that carefully, including with stakeholders and in the light of the CAS review, with the interests of children absolutely at the heart, and we will publish that guidance soon. On the points that the noble lady made about the data bill, those are issues I know that have been discussed at length, I think, in this House and in the other place. The point about the data bill is that it doesn't change the nature of sex or gender reporting in the way in which she implied. On the point about hospital wards, I do just have to say, given that the last government presided over a 2,000% increase in mixed-sex wards, she's right that there is a problem about the dignity that is available to patients in single-sex wards. But given the clarity in this guidance, NHS England are now working quickly on the guidance around reviewing this guidance and working quickly to make sure that that is communicated properly to the health service. And of course, this government's investment in the NHS will help practically to ensure that all people can have the dignity and care that they need in the NHS. Referring to the points raised by the noble lady Baroness Burt, I also know and have heard from trans people, their families and friends who are worried in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling. So I want to provide reassurance here and now that trans people will continue to be protected. As a government, we will deliver a full trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices. We will work to equalise all existing strands of hate crime, and we will review adult gender identity services so that all trans people get the high-quality care they deserve. The laws to protect trans people from discrimination and harassment will remain in place, and trans people will still be protected on the basis of gender reassignment, a protected characteristic written into Labour's Equality Act. The Supreme Court verdict is about clarity. This is not about the triumph of one group at the expense of another. It is not about winners or losers, and it's not about us or them. Everybody in our society deserves dignity and respect. Those are the values that define a modern and compassionate society, and those are the values that this government will uphold.
My Lords.